Okay, I'm Anshika Chaudhary, and on behalf of the IME Christ Student Chapter, I'm delighted to welcome you to day SAAT. Day 7 of SAAT, it aligns together very well. The Strategic Alumni Achievers Think Tank. If you've been here with us all week, welcome back. If today's your first session, here's a quick catch up. SAT isn't just an acronym, it means together in Hindi, and that perfectly captures the spirit of this series. This year, we're celebrating 7 years of the BCom Strategic Finance program with 7 batches, 7 evenings of conversations, and 7 essential career skills, all beginning on 7th of July and ending today. We've talked about everything from Big Four internships to entrepreneurships, from CAT prep to balancing academics and athletics and your creativity. And now we've arrived at this final session. Tonight's conversation is a powerful reminder that getting placed isn't the ending, it's just the beginning. Because there's a difference between getting placements and truly making it count. But before I introduce our speaker for today, I would like to remind everyone that we have SAT trivia at the end of the session, so please stay tuned for that. Now, let's talk about tonight's speaker, Chris Nelson, Corporate Finance Associate at KPMG Lower Gulf, is someone who has redefined what it means to thrive in the economic world, in the corporate world, from his first offer letter to now working across borders, building strategic insights and delivering real impact. Chris has turned every opportunity into a stepping stone for something bigger, and tonight he's here to show us how we can do the same. So, if you've ever wondered, how do I stand out after I get in? Or how do I turn my placement into a launch pad? This session is for you. Now, I would like to invite Chris to introduce himself.
Uh, Hi guys, hopefully I'm audible. So, okay, thank you. So, first off, I'd like to thank Sunilsa and Anshika. Thank you for that introduction. Well, we've already had an introduction actually, but sure, I will introduce myself. So, I am from the 2023 batch of strategic finance, like most of your speakers. I was there for the full 3 years, online and offline both. Um, I so yeah, I did my CMA in my second year, ended up getting placed in my fifth semester. And I was working with, like she had already mentioned, KPMG Valuation Services, which is a service line coming under deal advisory. So I worked there for a year, 9 months. And for the past 4 months, that is from February, I've been working with KPMG Middle East. So in both places, essentially, I worked under valuations as a specific field. And I would like to thank everyone here for joining us on a Sunday evening at 7. Wow, guys. Thank you, guys. And, I'm quite happy to see a couple of still familiar names. I see Vineet, I see Nihal, I see Varsha. So a couple of people that I've still seen 2 years after graduating, which my friends still joke about that I keep coming back to Christ. But I guess here I am. So thank you guys for having me, and hopefully this is something that's fruitful over the next 1 hour.
Thank you for that, Chris. So now, to keep the energy going, just like yesterday, we're opening the session for you. If you'd like to ask Chris a question directly, feel free to raise your hand and I'll call your name so that you can unmute. If not, you can also drop your question in the chat box. I'll be looking out for both. And while you take a moment to do that, we've already got some amazing questions through the registrations. So, Chris, I would like to start with the basics. With so
Sure.
many options available, how can students choose a career path that genuinely makes sense for them and not just follow what's popular?
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, to kind of tell you over the next 5 minutes on what you should be doing for the rest of your life is a little hard. This is nearly impossible. But I can give you a suggestion, right? Or maybe a hint of what you could ultimately use. Now, see, I do understand that our program is tailored in such a way where it's focused a lot more on finance and accounting. I think that sort of reflects even in the internships we can do. But very honestly, I would say try to get as much exposure as you can in the 3 years. And Christ is a very good platform to do that as well. Whether it be festing, which is something that I did while I was in university. I was festing for basically all 3 years of me being in university. And what that does is it gives you sort of a window, although a very grossly oversimplified window of what you would ultimately be working as. Obviously, if you're working as an HR in a company, you're not going to be defending why zombies shouldn't be hired, or if you're working as a PR person, you're not going to be, negotiating with terrorists. Hopefully, you wouldn't be negotiating with terrorists, but it does give you an insight into what it could look like in some way or form. And I think that was very helpful, especially to understand what you like or what you do not like. And what that does is, come time for placements, when you look at job descriptions, you sort of have an idea of whether does this make sense for what I want to do. And trust me, you're going to be working for, let's say, like 30 years or 40 years, or if you're, excellent at your job, you probably retire early. Nevertheless, if you go into a job where you do not like what you are currently doing, it doesn't really work out, right? So what I would suggest is, right before getting into it, try to figure out whether you like it. You can do that in two ways. First, like I said, is trying out a very grossly oversimplified version of, let's say, festing or what work could look like. And the second is internships, of course. Now, I do, again, like I said, I do understand that internships you might not be able to do a complete finance related, or you might not be, you might not be able to do something that's not finance. But try your best. Try in your first years, try in your earlier years, I guess, to understand if you would like something other than finance or accounting. If you do like finance or accounting, then I can probably address those questions later, specific to those subjects and what to choose even in those subjects, because they are quite diversified. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on how to sort of figure out like a base to where to apply and to understand.
That's actually really practical because like we recently finished with Praram, so I think everyone can
Okay.
relate to the festing environment, and
Okay.
hopefully like the first years who just went through that can relate to what you said. So yeah, moving on to the next question we have. Before landing the right role, it's crucial to
Right.
know what you're applying for. How can students figure out job roles actually align with their skills and interests, especially when titles can be very vague?
See, I mean, I think I'm very qualified to answer this question because of two reasons. Firstly, I've been on both ends of this question. I've been on the end where I'm like, what does this job description actually mean? And the second one, me talking to people that have reached out to me to actually ask what this job description means. But nevertheless, see, I mean, the best way to gain an insight is obviously to talk to the people who are currently working there. And for me, the role that I did apply for as a valuations analyst at that point, we were the second batch. So we were the second batch that KPMG Valuation Services LLP actually reached out to. They reached out to Christ the second time ever. And we just had one batch before us. But even then, coming back to Festing, because I knew a couple of people from Festing there, I could reach out to them and, sort of ask them, what is this role? What do you guys actually end up doing? And you the thing is, I can assure you that most companies would definitely have at least a couple of people, a couple of alumni, right? So if one person doesn't answer, the next person definitely would be. And ultimately, by the time you're in your third year, there's going to be somebody that's already placed there from your previous batch. So literally people that are sitting across the hall from you. And that's why I would say that networking when you're in university is also quite important when you're in your first, second, or third years. So ultimately, it's just that talking to somebody who's actually working there or has worked there. I myself personally have received a bunch of calls when I was working in India. Here, not so much because you're not going to find valuations analysts as soon as you type that on LinkedIn. And my name is probably not going to be the first ones to pop up because I'm currently not working there. But I did get a lot of messages, which, by the way, you can like feel free to like text me on LinkedIn if that's something that you think would help you. I'll try helping you. Hopefully, I don't confuse you too much. Uh, anyways, that is the best way, and you definitely would get pretty good insights, and they are going to be quite candid with you because you have nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose when they speak to you. So yeah, I think that's the best way to go ahead with figuring out what is actually going on in some of these roles.
Well, I personally relate to that very much because I too recently interned in a very vague role. It was
Okay.
like M&A intern, and I was like, what does that even mean? Like, what do I have to do? What skills would I need? So I had to find out through Google because there was no. So this was the first time Deloitte took interns for M&A, and I'm like,
Okay.
wow, that's just my luck. So I think,
Right.
yeah, networking would have helped me really well, but I would have like it would have been better to have someone. So everyone here, you have Chris as your buffer now if you want to apply for an analyst job.
Yes, I'm already getting notifications from LinkedIn as we speak. Hopefully, it's not you
That's
guys,
perfect.
but But see, I mean, another thing that I would like to touch upon is when you essentially Google some roles, right? Because, for example, the M&A role that you're talking about in Deloitte, we've actually had people join their M&A team. So there were people from my batch that were actually placed into Deloitte M&A. So ideally, even if you are going for an internship, you could reach out to those people to understand what they sort of do. But the problem with Googling things out is, see, that's something that I saw as well for my role. It helped me in another area. Um, but something that I did see was you don't get the right picture a lot of times, right? Because what happens is you get a lot of different roles you get a lot of different roles in a lot of different places. For context, Sanjay, who's just texted me, actually used to work with me in Valuation. So thank you for joining us on a Sunday. Sanjay, go do some work. But getting back to my point, what happens is that it doesn't give you the entire context, right? Um,
That's true. That's very true
yeah.
though.
So I would again like prefer that you'd speak to somebody who's actually already there.
I would have genuinely preferred that, but I just couldn't find anyone. So, but after I joined, I realized that yeah, there were people I could have reached out to. So I think
Right.
it was a mistake on my part, but it all worked out for me at the end. So I'm
Fair
happy
enough.
about that. Yeah,
Fair enough. Yeah, this is something you could probably do when you're sitting for your placements, which might be
yeah,
soon.
definitely. Now I know how to do it. So at least I got the experience.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, so Sanjay, like you said, you know him. He asked a question. Can you please explain about your valuations role and how you got it?
Okay, so this is something that even he would be very fit to answer because he's currently working there, like I mentioned. But anyways, see, uh, with valuations, right? Again, it's a very niche, it's a very specific role. So, firstly, it's figuring about whether you would like to join, because what I had seen was, see, there were four people that ended up working in valuations from my batch, and by the end of a year, there were just two of us, because two of them again had to leave the firm for multiple reasons. Um, and now after 2 years, there's just one person left. So from a batch of four, there's just one person left. I, of course, again stayed in valuations, but in a different entity. But see, with valuation, again, it's very niche. But if it's something that you do like, because we did have a subject in SF called FDM, Financial Decision Making, Final Decision Management. And in that subject, we did have part of our coursework was building a DCF, which was actually quite useful because ultimately, although it was not exactly in that way and we didn't have a lot of months to do it, I did end up working on a lot of DCFs when I was in valuations, and it did sort of help me understand the nuances at a much simplified level. But I would say, something like valuations, which is very niche. Again, I keep saying this word, but I'm emphasizing it because what happens is a lot of people do end up joining and they're completely not interested. So that is what I did to figure out whether I did like it. It's something that I'd done before. Sorry, I'm looking for his question. So what the role is exactly? Essentially, we do multiple valuations for, let's say, transaction services, for regulatory services, for a lot of tax purposes. We do it for internal reference as well when companies are restructuring or when companies are about to have some sort of M&A related deal. So that's what I did in India. Here it's a lot more transaction based, a lot more sell side or buy side. So yeah, in brief, Sanjay, you're welcome.
Yeah,
But
probably it would be great if Sanjay can come in and add on to the answer after just giving a quick intro about himself. We have made him as a co-host. Sanjay, you're there?
classic Sanjay.
It's okay. I think we can move on to the next
Yeah,
questions.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How did you figure out if the sell side was the right fit for you, and what factors should a student consider when making that decision? That's by Amulya.
Right. So, firstly, to clarify, so technically, I'm not on either sell side or buy side. I do work with both clients, right? Um, Now, see, the thing is, the relevance of this question for an undergraduate level might not be as high because, as far as I know, there aren't a lot of roles or a lot of companies that come in for a sell side related role. Although, if there are, that's amazing because there wasn't there when I was studying there. But what you should ultimately consider is what your career progression should look like, right? if sell side is something where you think you can make a mark and it's something very hard to get into, it's very competitive. But if it's something that you think you can get into and something that you can stay in, that's amazing. There's nothing like it. Because what happens with a lot of sell side is, firstly, there's a lot of legal and regulatory nuances that you have to be familiar with, which might not come as naturally because it's not. Although we do have corporate law and business law in our coursework, it's not something that we might find very interesting. And sort of dipping your feet in those waters to see if you'd like it. And to be very honest, in India, there are companies that work on both sell side and buy side. Like I said, even the role that I was working on, we did work with both buy side and sell side. Over here as well. So the difference between what I'm working right now and versus India was, here I do find a lot more transaction related, that is buy or sell side related engagements. Uh, so what I would say is, at this level, there isn't much of a differentiation in a lot of corporates as of now, at least. At least at an undergrad level, you would probably be working on both. But once you're done with your MBA, once you're done with your masters, you would probably have a better idea of what to choose. So that's how I would look at it.
Okay, that was a very well thought answer. So thank you for that. And I hope that answers your question, Amulya. Moving on, we have Nikita asking, what's something that helped you working in corporate because you studied about it in theory?
See, I mean, very honestly, I can't say there's a lot, okay? Because corporate is very different, right? It's a very steep learning curve for most people. Again, it depends on what what corporate you would be joining. Because I do know of companies that hire from Christ where almost, like 90% of the workforce is from Christ. So it ultimately is like you're back in university. But there are companies where it gets quite tricky, right? So the maximum that you could probably leverage from school or from university is figuring out how to work in teams, figuring out how working in teams, the kind of dynamics that are there in working in teams, because that does happen, sort of tends to happen. But again, another thing is, when you're at a university level, you're working with peers, people that are on the same level with you. But when you're in corporate, you're working with seniors and managers, and that can get quite complex. So in theory, the only things that do help are the technicals that you do learn, because that comes in handy a lot. uh, Believe it or not, even though I was in more of a core finance role, things like tax did play a huge part. So me learning tax laws actually did come in handy, because we do get a little bit of that. We do get a lot of accounting as well, regardless of whether you're in a finance role. Accounting is kind of like the language that you got to understand. So the technical terms do sort of help in corporate, but handling corporate, dealing with corporate is a completely different ball game altogether, and that's not something that you can study. But it's okay. Like, everyone does it. Everyone's been to university and back to corporate. So that's the way that, again, that's the way I think you should look at it ideally.
So I assume your transition was very smooth, or is that not the case?
No, I mean, see, I think I was very fortunate enough to have a very good team in valuations, because, like I mentioned, we were the second batch to ever join.
Yeah.
But I would say the managers there, as well as the team overall, was amazing and very welcoming. And they did understand to a very good extent as to what we needed. And I wouldn't say in terms of technical, because we were like the second batch they were handling as undergraduates. So for them, they had to like teach us a lot, and they had to put in a lot of effort, right? Because we've just done our undergrad and we have no idea what they're talking about. And in corporate, another thing is, everyone uses acronyms, and you have no idea what they're talking about, right? Like
Yeah.
everything is an acronym. Like, by EOD, I need the MBP verified for the DCF, and uh, it can get confusing.
That's very
Um,
true. Yeah.
yeah. But again, I would say at the same time, I was lucky enough. Like I said, I was very fortunate enough with a very good team. That might not be the case a lot of the time, right? But you make do with what you have. So I think people do figure it out eventually. Like, you have to, right? If you need to stay in the job.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for answering that really well. And I think we'll move on to the next question by Abhishek. What did you do in your college years that impressed the recruiters?
Okay. So see, with recruiters, I would. So what I would like to highlight here is, within your CV, right? There are essentially two things that you consider. Firstly, it's the fact that your CV during your first placement, or your placement while you're in university, versus after your first job, are two different things. Because while you're in university, especially in the undergrad level, you have practically no experience to look forward to. You have nothing that the interviewer can talk about. And I would say that's where your internships and your certifications do come in. By certifications, I'm not necessarily talking about a CFA or a CMA. I'm talking about the different technical certifications that you could do in your free time. So what I ended up doing, which was actually on accident, it was not planned, was I ended up doing two certifications every semester across my 5 semesters. I did end up doing, on average, two certifications, including SWAYAM. And I don't know if you guys know what SWAYAM is anymore, but we
We
had something
still do
called.
have Swayam.
Oh, okay, you still have SWAYAM. Okay, that's good, I guess. Anyways, uh, but these certifications do actually play a very good role because those are your talking points, right? When I was in during my interviews, the things that they kind of asked me were, firstly, it's about my internship. And let me tell you, like, my internship was 80% accounting and 20% finance. And during my internship, I had to sort of leverage the 20% that I did in finance, which would be more relevant to the role. So that's one thing that I would say, like, during your university, focus on your internship, focus on your certifications, because those are the two things. And the third thing is, try to get a lot of volunteer experience that's not related to the job role at all. Because what happens is they sort of ask you in the interview whether, what did you do besides studying or besides work, because they do look at hiring you on an aptitude basis as well. It's not only about your IQ, but even your emotional quotient plays a huge role here. So again, what I would say is focus on something where you can sort of highlight the things that you did besides university stuff. Things like LMP or acting, or like I've talked about festing already. But those kind of things. Focus on your extracurriculars as well, because those are talking points.
So
So
basically, just gear up.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, see, like I said, your CV right before your first job is very different, because the moment
Yeah.
you're getting into your second job, you can talk about what you did. You have a bunch of talking points, but the first interviews tend to be a little difficult because you have no talking points, and the interviewer as well has nothing to ask you, so he'll end up asking technical questions, and you don't
Yeah.
want that a lot of times.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Chris. Sorry to come in between. Again, we made Sanjay as a co-host. Sanjay left, and Sanjay is back now. Probably along with Chris, as Chris said, Sanjay is also good in valuation. Probably will be happy to hear from Sanjay too. Sanjay, you're
Hey, hi everyone. Hi, Sunisar. Thanks for the introduction. It's nice to see so many people still dedicated enough to join this event on a Sunday evening. And yeah, I wasn't aware of this, so everything that I'm speaking about right now is going to be just purely from my experience. And if I'll be turning on my video, but like I said, forgive the appearance. I really wasn't expecting any of this. So yeah, I'll be happy to talk along, Chris.
We welcome you, Sanjay, and we're really happy that you could join
Yes.
us.
Awesome. So a little bit of about myself. I'm Sanjay. I graduated from Christ in 2024 and graduated as the gold medalist from Christ, along with the best outgoing student and rank holder. It's I'm saying all this just to give you a little bit of introduction as to how where I was academically during college. Where I was in terms of my extracurriculars, I focused a lot on festing. I think in my third year, second year, third year combined, we did about 15 to 20 fests, and then I ended up getting placed at KPMG Valuations. So Chris and I worked at the same role for about a year until he decided to leave me and go.
It's an informed choice, by the way. I had to do it.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll
he
take
said
your
it had
word for
nothing to
it,
do with
Chris.
his choice, but yeah, it's just running away from me. Yeah, so I got placed in KPMG valuations where I recently completed 1 year. So I'll be happy to answer these questions that you might have from our perspective. So we'll have slightly different perspectives, of course. And I think the whole point of this session is just so that we can help you find your own perspective somewhere in the middle.
Yes, the more the merrier. So I think we can move on to the next question by Prarthana. This would be really well. Do you think valuations is a good starting point for a career in finance?
Okay, I'll let Sanjay take this question up first because he's done it he started his career recently. So, Sanjay.
Right. So when you talk about careers in finance, right, broadly, you can get into investment banking. And when most people think of finance roles, they think about buy side investment banking, which is your private equity, your venture cap, where you're actually managing money directly and investing it. Now, valuations is positioned in the sell side of it. Essentially, like I think Chris would have already told you, if there's a transaction happening, let's say between company A that wants to buy company B, you are assisting you're assisting in this transaction. You're trying to ensure this transaction happens. So that's where the sell side comes in. So understanding investment banking from a sell side perspective gives you that level of understanding as to what goes around behind the scenes, what goes on essentially to ensure that everything on the buy side is happening smoothly. So all the skills that you learn in valuation, such as financial modeling, such as making a DCF, understanding what really gives a company its worth. Now, if I tell you Apple is a $3 trillion company, why is it a $3 trillion company, right? You understand that the value of a company is essentially derived from the sum of its component parts, like how it generates its revenue, how profitable is it at an operational level. So those kind of skill sets, understanding how to think about companies, that how to think about what gives a company value would also be invaluable, right? Because if I tomorrow, if I come and say I give you, let's say, 1 crore to invest in 5 different startups, how would you identify one company over another, right? Understanding how to look at companies, how to analyze how companies perform is a skill set that you'll definitely learn in valuations or even other roles. Like I think Chris was talking about the Deloitte M&A role. So these kind of roles where you have a more analytical approach to your jobs, I think is a good start point. Plus, the connections that you build within the job itself will allow you to exit. A lot of people that work with us, right? Like, for example, Chris exited to a better opportunity abroad. There are a lot of people who exited into single family offices or private equity funds, venture cap, fintech businesses. Because when you work in consulting, you're working with clientele that are in the top, like all of the top companies in India, all of the top VCs in Bangalore. Most of them would be a client of yours, very likely. So even in terms of that networking, I think it's something that's a great value add for you. Yeah.
And what I'd like to add here is, see, another thing about the nature of our role, right, or something that I see in general in consulting, is the fact that you can look at it two ways. So there are some roles where essentially you would be working for months on end on a single project. But in valuations, what happens is we work on multiple projects at the same time. So to give you some idea, I was working on like at least like let's say 5 to 6 engagements on minimum at the same time. But what that does is it gives you a perspective into different industries. So there was this one week I remember where I was working on like valuing an IPL club versus valuing a fintech versus valuing a hospital versus valuing let's say like an automobile manufacturer, and all of this in the same week. So you sort of get an insight into multiple industries, and that helps you leverage yourself in any industry that you end up wanting to join later on. You have some experience in that already. It's sort of a jack of all but master of none sort of situation. But again, master of none is better than a master of one, is the end of that phrase. But my point being, valuations was a very difficult role, and I think that's something that Sanjay would also agree, because it is very nuanced. There are a lot of technical terms which you might not necessarily understand, a lot of acronyms. Uh, but at the end of it, at the end of that learning curve, you do start to understand industries separately. So I think that is a very good starting point. Or at least I felt it so far because that's the only starting point I've had. But
Okay,
yes.
thanks to both of you. That was a really well thought and detailed answer. And now I would like to move on to the next question by Sayed. What should a student prioritize in college? It's a multiple choice. First is best clubs and campus activities, social exposure, teamwork, and second is certifications, technical skills, internships, and career building. Even though both are important, what should a student prioritize more, especially in the early years of college?
I think we should let Chris take this one first.
Okay.
Okay, see, I mean, now your second option, that certifications, technical skills, and internships, is something that's more career oriented, right? You have 3 years at university. Okay, you are transitioning from your 12th grade. Okay, or you've taken a gap year and you've decided to join. But nevertheless, the transition should never be something where you immediately jump into technicals or you immediately jump into like building my resume, because you have time to build your resume. You have time to build your resume towards the end of your placement. I would say honestly, and there's something that I've said from the beginning, I think even Sanjay would probably know, is like have fun. Okay, have fun, like regardless of what you're doing, towards your own extent of what is fun, right? Like I do understand that maybe fest, campus activity, certifications might not be your your definition of fun. It's probably not in college at all. Anyways, try to have the most fun of the options that you currently have. If doing fests, if doing club activities is to you more fun than doing technical skills and internships, which I pray that it is, I would suggest you doing that first, and then you move on to, let's say, something like certification and technical skills. So focus primarily on developing your soft skills. So in the last week, in my last week, 3 days, I had 3 days of trainings, 8-hour trainings of how to develop your soft skills. And these were very good trainings. These were not done by these were done by professionals outside of KPMG. They were different consultants, but all they did was trying to help you develop your soft skills. And it's quite important because I would say the role here is a lot more client facing. We do have to present to the client, which is something that you do in FES, but it is something that is useful. So I would prefer if people could focus on their soft skills initially and then they move on to something like certifications.
And Sanjay, do you have anything else to add on to that?
I think the way of looking at it, right? The perspective of what should you focus on is itself, I don't think it's the right way to approach it, or at least that's not the way I approached it. Because for me, it was never an option between either I study or I have fun. I think that's what Chris was trying to say, which is that you should always be you can have a balance of both in college, right? And I think the kind of course that SF is, I'm not sure if it still is this way, but it's 70% of your final score is based on your CIs, right?
Yes, it is still like that.
Right. And it's still like that, right? And compared to other courses where it's about 50-50.
Yeah, yeah, that's the case.
Right. So I think that one thing, I think being in SF, it gives you that advantage where you don't have to focus as much of your academic effort over one particular period of time. A lot of our friends in, let's say, other courses where they had to cram before the final exam. But being in a course like SF, it allows you to spread out your academic rigor throughout the sem, which allows you to focus on building your soft skills, right? Because at the end of the day in corporate, there are a lot of people who are exceptionally good at their jobs who will get passed up because they just can't present themselves, right? It's what's the point of being the best if nobody thinks that you are, or if you're not able to present your own worth. At the same time, you can't have an air of attitude about you without having the technical skills to back it up. So soft skills, yes, go fest, make sure all of your extracurriculars are up to par, but at the same time, ensure that your CIAs are orderly, right? Because at the very least, approximately 70% of your grade is going to be coming from there. So I think it's something that you can very easily balance and get the best of both worlds out of.
Overall balance is the key after everything. Yeah. So
Agreed.
moving on to the last question for today. It's by Johns. I recently interned at Grant Thornton Middle East. So I'm curious what the differences do you notice between working in the Middle East and in India, whether in terms of work culture or client expectations, and was the transition smooth for you when you made the shift?
Right. Okay, so this is something again very recent. Um, See, very honestly, in terms of work experience and figuring out the role, especially directly after your university, the learning curve in India is way harder. Okay, it's way steeper. You are going to be learning at least like 2 to 3x of. Okay, actually, no, that's a gross underestimation. Probably like at least 10x of what you probably did learn in university. Okay, but that's going to come in handy because the second part of the question, that is my transition from there. See, the transition was amazing because the moment I moved here, the kind of work that I was expected in India to do, maybe in let's say a couple of hours, over here I'm given at least like a day or 2 days to complete the same task. Okay, because the demand that you have in India is very different, right? In India, you're focused more on the quantity that you can push out, especially in terms of engagements. You are expected to complete engagements in timelines which are considered unreasonable anywhere else in the world. Okay. But what that does is it gives you very good rigor, especially when you're starting off your career. And to anyone that would ask me whether it's better to start your career in India or elsewhere, I would say India is the best place to start your career. And to some extent, even continue your career in. I know that sounds very counterintuitive to what I've actually done, but the learning that you do have in India, especially in your initial years, is insane. The kind of markets that you're exposed to, the kind of work that you're exposed to is very different compared to, let's say, other markets, unless you move to obviously much more mature markets like, for example, the US or the UK. Even there, you wouldn't be subject to the kind of work life that you're subject to in India, right? The work life is difficult. But see, I mean, you're in the beginning of your career, right? Work life shouldn't matter as much. Controversial opinion, but work life shouldn't matter as much, at least in the beginning, because this is sort of where you grind, you sort of understand what you need. Um, and in terms of client expectations, see, I'll tell you honestly, the client expectations anywhere is the same. Okay. Client expectations in India, wherever you go, they want it in the fastest, in the cheapest, and in the best way possible. So clients don't like to sort of compromise on anything. But the thing is, it's about where they draw the line. So in India, the line is drawn very far off. Okay, it's there, you can see it. But the line drawn in different countries on part of consultants depends. So for your example, the thing is, it has a lot to do with staffing and pricing as well. How many analysts or how many managers can be staffed on a single project versus how much you're getting paid for each project. There's a function of that as well. In India, we focus a lot more on quantity but at cheaper price, and that sort of reflects in quality as well, right? If you go to other other consultants in other parts of the world, you will see that they might do a more detailed study, a more in-depth study. But what happens is, we don't produce as much of an output as India does, or any other high functioning economy for that matter. We don't work on as many engagements, so we don't go as in depth. But here we go very in depth, but we don't have that much output. So that's the difference that I would say, very simply put. If there are any follow-up questions, I'll be happy to take that on, because I know this is a very interesting and touchy subject sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, that is. But due to time constraint, we can only ask you one more question. If
No
you would
worries.
like to connect with him on LinkedIn, you are free. Yeah, you can do that.
Yes.
So, one last question to you is, if you had to leave us with one line of advice, what would that be?
Um, See, this is something that even Anshika texted me saying that she will definitely ask this question. So I was definitely preparing for this. Uh, See, one line that I would love to give is, be lazy wherever you can. Okay. And this is something that's really helped me as well. I would have just said be lazy, but then I added the wherever you can because that's very important. There are places in your role, especially when you start working or even in university for that matter, where you cannot be lazy, right? You do need to do some things. You can't just like chat GPT it away. And by the way, we don't have chat GPT at work, especially in India, we don't have it. Here we do, but we don't have it there because there's a lot of AI related constraints and you can't really use. Anyways, I digress. But try to be lazy wherever you can. Okay. Uh, a lot of times at work, there's a huge call for smart work over hard work. Do not think that because hard work has worked for you so long for the past 3 years of your life, or for the past 15 years of your life where you've studied, you've worked hard, you've gotten good grades, you got to university. Hard work does not work when you come to a real world setting. Their smart work matters, right? You work lazy. You work in such a way where you can do things in the least amount of time, and that's what managers as well want. But you don't compromise on quality. So you be lazy, but where you can.
I think
That's
that's the most relatable advice till now. So, thank you for that. And Sanjay, if you
I'm
had
glad.
one line of advice to give us, what would that be?
Disclaimer: don't
Honestly,
listen
I
to
think
Sanjay all the time. But
I think it's very unfortunate that my advice is going to be listen to Chris. But
no, no, no. I'm kidding,
Uh,
guys. Kidding.
because honestly, we're very similar people, right? And work smarter, not harder is one of the most important things that you can learn. So if you have 4 hours to cut down a tree, spend the first 2 hours sharpening your axe. What we're trying to say is, I'll reference certain stories from our corporate life, right? There are a couple of, for example, Chris and I were working on a project together with the UAE team, with the KPMG UAE team for a Sheikh's for the Sheikh's investment fund. And the timelines were extraordinarily tight. So they'll send you data, let's say in the night at around 11, you'll be on calls till about 12, 12:30. And the next morning, they want some sort of deliverable or some sort of output. And when you're working on such large engagements, you can't afford to sit and try and focus on every single cell. So what we ended up doing was we said that at what level of materiality will we consider as relevant, and then what below that we're not going to look any further. So we kind of had to plan our whole workout. One more story that's from more not with Chris was for how many of you watched the IPL? I'm sure a lot of you do. So we were valuing an IPL team. I can't disclose which IPL team, but Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. they sent out the data, and they wanted the value of the IPL team by the next day, including like a signed report and everything, right? Including everything next day by 5 p.m. So when you have such stringent timelines, and that's how a lot of your corporate careers are going to go, especially if you're getting into more chaotic jobs or consulting kind of jobs. So here, all you have to do is identify, work smarter, not harder. And the way you do that, right? We're not just telling you do it. There's a very simple way to do that, which is ask yourself, what would the person sitting on the other side of the table want? A lot of times when you start doing, let's say you can apply this to even a CIA. When you start doing a CIA, you will start getting in depth into some topic, but without really considering what is the need of the other person. I think when you work in consulting, you understand first and foremost what is the other person looking for. Now, once you identify that, you kind of work at that, and that is the most important problem statement that you need to solve. So I think identify the end goal, begin with the end in mind, and then you work a lot smarter than you work harder.
Thank you so much to both of you. And with that, we have reached the final chapter of SAT 2025. I would like to thank both of you for answering not just our questions, but the audience questions as well. And your story reminded us that getting placed is not only the beginning. What you do after your offer letter is what defines your journey. From mindset shifts to everyday excellence, you've shown us how to turn opportunity into impact. So I'd like to thank both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thanks, Sanjay, for
Thank you, Karan.
graciously joining me as a co-host. Sorry, not co-host, co-speaker. But
Okay,
yes,
now
Yeah,
before we
thank you so
close the
much,
curtain,
Alyssa. Thank you so much, everyone, for having us.
yes. Thank you,
Thanks to the
guys. Thank
IMA
you, Sunil,
chapter
sir.
for having us. Thank you.
Now, before we close the curtains on SAT 2025, a few things that we have is SAT trivia begins right now, and yes, it is live. So we are gonna put up the link. You can join us through that with your original mail IDs and names so that we can guess who the final winner is. And yes, prizes will be waiting for you. The link would be in the chat box.
So we'll just take a minute as due to rain, there is a little bit of network issue here. Just give us a minute.
Okay, sir. So till we sort out that, I would like to announce one more exciting news that we are gonna do SAT on every 7th of every month with a fresh new conversation, a new speaker, and new takeaways to keep you inspired. So keep joining us every 7th, every month. Sayed raised their hand. Do you still have a question? Okay, so continuing, do not leave the SAT groups just yet. It's okay, Sayed. Do not leave the groups because we have more exciting talks coming your way. And now we just have to wait for the SAT trivia link. So, yeah. You can scan the QR and start the quiz. I think we have our winner. So Rishabh is our winner, and we all congratulate him. Thank you for joining and being so participative, everyone. Now, to end the session, I would like to show my gratitude to the Department of Commerce Christ deemed to be university for always believing in us. IMA Bangalore chapter for being our constant guiding force, and Dr. Sunil MP, our faculty coordinator, for being the unwavering support behind every session. Please don't forget to fill the feedback form. It's quick and it helps us grow. And with that, to everyone who tuned in today, thank you for showing up, not just for SAT, but for yourself as well. This may be the end of the series, but it's the beginning of your story. So keep asking, keep growing, and we'll see you on the 7th of next month. Good night and congratulations on completing SAT 2025.